Chapter 61. What are you doing? A cold voice rang out from behind. Belch turned around in surprise, seeing Siddle standing silently behind him. He didn't know when she had appeared behind him, he didn't even hear her breathing, her cold, emotionless blue eyes stared at him. Belch shivered, unconsciously looking down at the floor to see if his sister had a shadow. The girl who had silently appeared like a ghost with an emotionless face snatched the notebook from his hand, closed it, and threw it on the table. Didn't anyone teach you not to touch other people's things? Belch's legs were now weak, he leaned one hand on the table behind him and stammered, trying to explain, I just. But before he could finish, Siddle coldly interrupted him. Get out of here immediately, go back to your room. Belch wanted to say that this place was originally his room. But facing the girl's cold gaze, he shivered and didn't dare to say anything, avoiding Siddle's line of sight, and left dejectedly. The boy with short platinum hair returned to his bedroom. The more he thought about what he had just seen, the more scared he became. He took out his cell phone in confusion, thought for a long time, and then took the initiative to send a text message to his mother. Mom, I'm 16 years old now, I think I can be independent. I promise I won't do anything to disappoint you, or tell your sister to go. Belch could guarantee that he had seen no less than 30 different killing techniques in that notebook, even though he had only glanced at it. Then he thought about how she never made a sound when she appeared, along with her terrifyingly white skin. Belch absolutely did not want to live next door to someone who didn't look like a normal person no matter how he looked. However, due to the time difference, Belch had not received response, fatigue had already set in, he crawled into bed and fell asleep. Midnight. The boy woke up. He was lying comfortably on the bed, the moonlight shining through the window into the room. Belch sleepily opened his eyes, covered his eyes with his hand, turned over and intended to continue sleeping, but suddenly realized that something was wrong. He had clearly drawn the curtains before going to bed. How could there be light coming in from the window now? The curtains had been opened by someone had quietly entered the room while he was sleeping. In an instant, Belch's back was covered in cold sweat, his body stiffened, and his Adam's apple moved. In the dark room, his range of motion was very small, slowly rolling to the edge of the bed. Suddenly he caught sight of a pair of bright eyes hidden in the darkness. At some point, the blonde girl was already sitting next to his bed, one slender white arm propped up against the pillow, her blue eyes quietly looking at him, the other hand waving a sharp dagger, the dagger moving on her fingertips, creating a very beautiful movement. The girl's lifeless eyes looked down at him from above, instantly paralyzing Belch with fear. If in the middle of the night, you found someone in your room with a dagger in hand, she didn't even say anything, nor did she wake you up, just standing at the head of the bed coldly looking at you. Belch almost stopped breathing. In just a few short seconds, he had imagined dozens of different ways in his head, and after seeing the news that her son had logged out of the earth, would his mother regret bringing home such a well-disguised pervert murderer? Who knows, Siddle might not be caught by the police because she seemed very used to doing this, maybe after killing him she still retreated properly. The more Belch thought about it, the more desperate he became. Just when he was about to cry from fear, the girl sitting at the head of the bed, who was silently waving her knife, suddenly whispered. I heard you like calling others useless. The face with beautiful features gradually approached, but Belch didn't have time to admire it. Those lifeless eyes looked down at the teenager lying paralyzed on the bed, trembling in fear. Siddle curled her lips and sneered. Her voice was very clear, the sound was both deep and light, echoing in the dark room, sounding eerie. Maybe they're not useless. Belch looked at his nominal sister with a strange smile, like both contempt and pity, but you're definitely a scum. She leaned over and looked straight at Belch. The knife-playing motion in her right hand suddenly stopped, and she gently let go. Slap. The sharp knife grazed Belch's cheek, stuck into the pillow, and stabbed diagonally across the side of his face. Belch was scared stiff by the sharp knife blade, lying paralyzed on the bed, only hearing the girl's cold, lazy voice. These past few years, my temper has been bad, I've been very patient with you. She smiled even brighter, but there was no trace of laughter in her eyes. So you have to listen, don't disappoint me. Belch. The end of naughty children is not good. It wasn't until the girl left that Belch was able to move again. He stiffly got up from the bed and picked up the knife, only to find that it was the knife that Henry had lost that afternoon. He held the knife tightly, suddenly feeling a slight pain in his face. He reached out to touch it, and sure enough, there was blood on his hand. When the knife fell, it accidentally scratched his cheek. There was still a clump of platinum hair by the pillow. Belch held the knife in a daze, understanding what Siddle meant. She was making him return the knife and end his relationship with Henry and the others. But Belch straightened his still trembling legs, got out of bed, closed the door first, and after checking and rechecking, picked up the cell phone on the table and dialed his mother's number. Beep beep beep. After only a few rings, the call was connected. Belch's mother, Kayla, was a little surprised. After all, her son rarely took the initiative to call her, but she didn't expect the first thing the child said was a trembling question. Mom, is my older sister mentally ill? Kayla. Belch hurriedly wanted to tell his mother the truth. Mom, she came into my room in the middle of the night just now. I had locked the door. I don't know how she got in. She also held a knife and seriously threatened my safety. I also saw that she had a notebook that recorded many murders of perverts. Belch couldn't care less about his relationship with Henry and the others right now. He was almost scared to pee his pants just now, and now compared to his so-called friends, he was more worried about his own life. He lowered his voice and asked, "Your sister really doesn't have any mental symptoms or criminal records?" Kayla was so provoked that she burst out laughing, and asked, "So what did your sister do to threaten your safety?" Belch touched his face and pondered. She scratched a 3 centimeters long wound on your face. The woman's extremely disappointed voice rang out from the other end of the phone. Belch, I didn't expect that just to chase your sister away, you would slander your sister in such a ridiculous way. Do you think this joke can be told so easily? She's your sister after all. Don't you know what kind of child Siddle is? And yet you dare to make up such an absurd lie. I feel so ashamed to have a son like you. Kayla angrily hung up the phone. Belch. The hand holding the phone trembled slightly. However, what he said was all true. Even if he treated Siddle as his sister, Siddle didn't treat him as her brother. That was clearly the gaze of a pervert looking at his prey. And a lowly and incompetent prey at that. Suddenly, there was the sound of something heavy falling to the ground next door. Belch suddenly trembled, looking at the room on the other side of the wall in horror, even though he couldn't see anything here. He thought for a while, gritting his teeth, hesitating between fear and curiosity. Finally he picked up the phone and quietly leaned half of his body out of the room. He saw that the light in Siddle's room was still on, the door was slightly open and not closed tightly. Thinking of the sound just now, Belch carefully swallowed his saliva. What was Siddle doing? He hesitated for a moment, but then mustered up the courage to pretend to go downstairs and walk through the hallway, while stuffing his cell phone into his side pocket and turning on the video recording. If he could record Siddle's true face, perhaps his mother would believe him and then chase her away. For the first time, Belch longed for his mother to return to his side. As he passed by the half-open door, he peeked inside. However, after seeing what was happening behind the door, Belch gasped, his heartbeat suddenly accelerating. He saw the scene of death. Although he had been mentally prepared, Belch never thought that this scene would happen so quickly. The tall, muscular man in his work clothes fell to the floor, a pool of blood flowing across the smooth floor. From the gap, Belch could only see half of the girl's body. It seemed like she was squatting beside that burly adult man. Belch, who already had a psychological shadow towards Siddle, unconsciously imagined her waving a knife around on that person's body. Perhaps this demon was still researching how to dismember a corpse and destroy the evidence. Although Belch thought he had hidden very well, it seemed like the person in the room still noticed his heavy and intermittent breathing. The tall and thin figure slowly stood up, forming a shadow under the light. Belch took 2 steps back, intending to run downstairs when he saw the door being kicked open by someone. His sister, that demon with bloody hands, looked at him from top to bottom with an appraising gaze, then her gaze stopped on the cell phone in his side pocket for a moment, suddenly revealing a cold smile. "Looks like you still won't listen." Her voice was both gentle and indifferent. Belch could even hear a hint of tenderness in it. His Adam's apple moved, wanting to turn around and run away, but was kicked in the knee by the girl behind him. Her strength was surprisingly strong. She kicked him down and grabbed his collar, dragging him into the room with a bloody floor. Clank. The door was closed ruthlessly. Belch's 2 hands were scratching the floor. Just in one night, he suffered a series of psychological traumas that almost brought the spirit of this teenage boy to the brink of collapse. He cried crazily, "Sister, sister, I was wrong. I will listen to you, don't do anything, hoo. Siddle." She sighed regretfully and glanced at the boy who was crying loudly and hugging her thigh tightly because he discovered that even if he went underground, he wouldn't be able to escape. Siddle patted the boy's cheek. Under his frightened and dazed eyes, she gently said, "It's too late.